All right, so it looks like we're going to be getting into our winner's final match first here. Both players switching over to the Puyo. As you can see, since we're in Puyo Puyo Tetris, they're going to explicitly select Puyo because you can actually play Tetris versus Puyo and vice versa. So both players dropping their pieces immediately in the same spots, both using the classic-looking Puyos as well.
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice that at first. Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
the opponents did have preference on what they wanted to choose. I mean, I personally like just the new school, generally what they look like nowadays, but these are definitely pretty easy to distinguish still. But we both had GTR starters here, both extending their tails and seeing what they can get. Started to analyze this right now. Looks like Poochy's got a pretty good start right now.
Yeah, that's going to be a nice... Ooh. Could have been on the power 7 there. Went for the 9 chain, though. Wow.
Yeah, that just
and that might be
Ruunix.
curtains. Yeah, I was gonna say. That's you know, that's the nature of Puyo, though. It's gonna be very quick if you can't cancel out the opponent's chain like that. Since there's no swap or stalling in this mode, you're gonna take the damage pretty much immediately if you can't cancel it out. And I believe Dev mentioned yesterday that pretty much with the size of the Puyo board, if you have 2 rock Puyos worth of garbage, it's unsurvivable, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's correct. It's gonna fill you up and destroy you. There's different ways you can do with it. Typically, at the higher level play, you will see people trying to do more harassments to deal with someone. But if you notice you're not getting harassed and you can outchain your opponent pretty easily, sometimes they'll just, try to build up that chain as quickly as they can. And if, you're not having to deal with the harassments, it's pretty easy to win those matches.
Yeah, as you can see, Puyo kind of turns into a race at the beginning of the match to see who can build the largest chain without being interrupted. So speed deals a great factor into this, almost even more so than Tetris in a way, because with Tetris you at least have a chance to downstack in a way. I feel like with Puyo, if you can't cancel out that first chain immediately, you're pretty much donezo. It's really interesting to see how quickly you actually have to build in order to be able to answer that first attack from your opponent. How useful do you think it would be for one of these guys who tend to spend quite a few seconds right now building up these first chains? Do you think a level of flat, like a flat layer of harassment could actually be beneficial to them? It seems like they're both electing to go for very long chains to start.
It can be beneficial, you just got to be careful what you send, because sometimes just doing a 2 or even a 3 chain will still leave someone's trigger wide open, and they'll be able to outchain you easily on the next one. But
yeah,
as we're saying that, Poochy
Puyos
takes game 1 there.
I think it's interesting. It's also important to note that while you can harass somebody, you can try to cover up and bury them. If they're able to dig quickly enough to get to that chain, it leaves you in a position where you've actually spent some of your Puyos. So that's an interesting thing that you were kind of getting at, where it can leave you in a position where if you harass them, you cover up their chain, then they uncover it faster than you can build another chain. You're kind of in a really bad position at that point. So it's interesting. I think there's a lot of cerebral play when it comes to stuff like this. Very strategic, and you have to look at both you and your opponent's board in a way.
For sure. This is one of the most strategic puzzle games out there, in my opinion. A lot of them have a lot of technical skill that you still got to be up to get to that level. But Puyo is a lot of back and forth, analyzing your opponent's board so you can make that decision whether or not you want to harass or not. And there's tons of videos on YouTube you can look up of it. One guy specifically, I would recommend looking up, a guy named Tom. I believe he's the best player in the world, but he just builds up so quickly and constantly harasses, and he tries to pressure you into setting off your main chain. But the second you panic and you do set it off, he's going to keep building and try to just outdo it. And that's generally what you want to go with here. It looks like both of these players are opting to just go with that big chain, and it's been pretty back and forth right now. When it was a 2-1 for the first set here, it's going to be tied up 1-1 most likely, unless Poochy, he's not going to be able to find the purples.
Yeah, that power 5 there on the end of Ruunix chain was just the perfect cancel for that. Even sent it over a rock Puyo, almost 2 rock Puyos back over, able to barely survive, but it was enough to where Poochy did not have time to dig. So it looks like Ruunix is favoring to build heavily up on the left side, whereas Poochy tends to do a more flat build. I think it's interesting to look at the way they balance the stacks like that. because one thing that is kind of interesting to note is that that X at the top of the screen that you see is actually the way you lose the match. If a Puyo of any color resides in that X spot and doesn't get matched immediately when you set it down, then you'll lose the match. So a lot of people, what they'll do to offset their garbage, a lot of the times they'll build in columns that aren't underneath the X heavily on the left or right side. So when the garbage falls, you have that well in the middle to hopefully survive hits.
Poochy sets off his chain here. It ends with a little bit of power instead of getting a full chain, but it's plenty enough as he's going to take the second game too. I should mention, I don't think we said this at the beginning, all of these are going to be first to 2 stars, best 3 out of 5 sets, so it's going to be consistent, and we got an all clear to start at the beginning here, so once these guys make their next clear, it's a whole rock Puyo that's going to be sent back to the opponent, as you're going to see from Ruunix immediately here. So it can work out to your advantage, but Poochy can easily send his all clear at any time right now. It's very interesting the way you want to deal with an all clear. A lot of players will choose to just build on the right side so they have enough Puyo to, or when the rock falls on them, they still can like dig out to that chain that they built on the right side.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how they both decided to use that. Actually, kind of working out in Poochy's favor, like you mentioned. Knowing that he could take the Rock Puyo on the simple 1 match from Ruunix on the other side, electing to use the garbage in a way and keeping his all clear for a smaller chain to cover up what Ruunix started building, and then able to harass down by breaking down the garbage and sending smaller chains, actually winning the match and covering up a lot of options for him there. Very well played, actually, by Poochy in that case.
Yeah, so Poochy is 1 good chain away from taking the set already. It's been pretty close the whole time, but Ruunix has got a big hole to dig herself out of right now. Both of them have some pretty good starters right now. Like you mentioned, Ruunix likes to build a little bit up top on the left a little bit more. But it looks like Poochy is going to counter this pretty well. A 7, and it's going to be... Oh, yeah, this is
going to be enough.
That is definitely enough.
That's going to be the power 8, and that's going to be the match. I don't think... Yeah, that's not enough. This is over for sure. Another important note, a standard match in Puyo for the amount of... and I think that's the match, actually, for Poochy, right?
Yeah, that was
Poochy's going to be moving on to Grands and Winners side.